Hi guys, how are you doing? Let's look at the sort method in JavaScript in this video. So I find this method to be one of the more important methods to understand, and it's a really powerful method because you can sort arrays in different ways, and it's very interesting to understand how you can use it to sort it by a property in an object, for instance, and stuff of that nature. So without further ado, let's jump into a simple example. So I have three files. I have sort.js, sort2.js, and sort3.js. So let's look at the first file. So here I have a simple input, and I want to create a function that will sort this in an ascending order, and an ascending order is basically from the lowest to the highest, so 1, 2, 3, and so on. So for instance, in this scenario, I want it to be 1, and then 12, and then 150, and so on. So if I just try to call the function, I'll say const sorted numbers, and I will call the function sort like this, and I want to log this out too, and I will run the code in terminal. So I will open up my terminal and say node sort.js, and the output is 1012, and so on. So something is not really correct here, as you might see that I was expecting 1 and then 12 and then 150. So why is this behaving in this way? And the answer is that it's basically looking at it lexically. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's only looking at the characters. So since this is 10, this is 12, this comes first, and the same goes here. So this is 12, this is 13, so this comes first, and then 15. So it's not looking at the numbers as whole values, so to say. So another way to sort this would be to actually add a callback function inside of the sort. So as you can see in the description, it says that it can take in a compare function as a parameter. So this function is really powerful, and it basically takes in the callback function itself takes in two parameters. So the first element and the second element. And now what you want to do is, the way it works is that if you return 1, then basically the position will be swapped. So based on a condition, you can return 1, and then it will swap the second element with the first one. So the second element will take the position of the first one. And if you return -1 or a negative number less than 0, then you will keep the position, and if you return 0, you keep the position, but you will sort the two items in respect to the other elements. Right now, it's really theoretical. It doesn't make much sense, but you will see what I mean right now. So if I just return, actually what you would do is you would return first minus second. And let's look at it now. Let's look at what output we get. So we get 1, 12, 150, 1000, and 13, 37. So this looks like the correct output. And the reason why this is working is basically because of the reason that I mentioned before, that let's say this will be the first item, and this will be the second one. So if we just make the subtraction here, we will see that it will be a positive number. And as I said before, that if it is a positive number, then we swap position. So the second, meaning the 1 in the first iteration, will take the position of this one. So this will be 1. And then it really just goes on. So it looks at the next 2 items and does the same thing. And eventually it reaches a point where it basically sorts the array for you. So that's the simple way to do it. Of course, you can write it much simpler in the one-liner. That's possible too. I'll do that in a minute. But one thing I want to show you too is that you can do it in a descending order. So starting with the highest number and going down. So this would be just by swapping these 2 around. So if I run the code, now we see that it's the opposite order. So this is also completely possible. And if I want to refactor this and make it easier, so to say, you might see this many times. So A minus B. That's a simple way to sort it. And if I run it, I still get it in an ascending order. And if I change it to B minus A, I will get, I need to save the file too, of course. I get it in a descending order. So this is a simple explanation of the method. So let's move on with the next file, which is dealing with strings. So now we have an array of strings, and I want to sort this in an ascending order. And when you sort letters or strings in an ascending order, you start with the lowest or the smallest letter, so to say, which is A. So A is the smallest, and Z would be the highest or the biggest. So let's just sort this out now. So usernames.sort, and let's see what we get. So it's sort-2, and as you might see here, it's sorted, and this looks good to me. One answer which you might ask yourself is, okay, how can I sort this in the opposite order? So how can I sort it in a descending order? So you have the way in which you use the callback function, as I said before. That's one way to do it. So let me just comment this out, and I'll just write it in inside of the log. So sort, and then we have the callback function, and I'll say first, second, and here I want to execute some logic. So I want to check if the first item is greater than the second. So for instance, if B is greater than A, which it is, we know that B is a greater letter than A, then we want to return -1. And as I mentioned before, -1 is basically going to let the first item stay at its position. Otherwise, I want to return 1. So let's see what this gives us. So now it gives us the list in a descending order. So this is not maybe what you wanted. Maybe you want it in an ascending order. Then you can just say that if the first item is greater than the second, then you want to basically swap them around, right? So you want the second one to be at the first position, and if not, then you want to return -1. Let's see what this gives us. Yes, it gives us the list in an ascending order. And a simpler way to do it, a simpler way to sort strings in a descending order is basically to use the sort method, and then you want to use the reverse method after it. So it's basically you're chaining methods. So you have one method here which is executed, and you have the reverse method, which basically flips the array, so to say. So you sort it in an ascending order because that's the default behavior, and then as a second step you reverse it, so you make it descending. Let's look at what it gives us. I'll comment this out too because I'm not interested in it. So it gives me the list or the array in a descending order. So this is awesome. This is the basics of how you would deal with values.